Hello everyone, welcome back to A Couple Books. Today I'm bringing you another review on the book I just finished reading, which is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. This is his debut novel, and I'm super excited to share with you guys some of my thoughts. Before we get started, let me just tell you a little bit about this world. We are living in a typical medieval fantasy world here. You done? You done? We are living in a typical fantasy world, and in this fantasy world there are monsters, of course, and these monsters get into the city sometimes. They harass small villages, and as well they infest and overrun the forest. Now, a few thousand years ago there used to be a lot more monsters, and they used to come in these massive hordes back during the time when the Fae ruled the realm. But now humans are in charge, and with that comes these bands of humans that come together, and sometimes non-humans, but mostly humans, and they come together to go and hunt down these monsters and kill them. With that being said, now we can jump into the times of this book. This book follows Clay Cooper. Clay Cooper used to be part of a band over 20 years ago. This band was known as Sage, and this band of his was super famous. They were super well known. They took down a lot of big bads that wasn't normal, and they were quite successful. But over the years, bands fall apart, and they eventually decided to disband and move on with their respective lives. Clay Cooper, who was one of the muscles in this group, has moved in with his wife and has had a kid, and he's just living a quiet, peaceful life. At Clay's front door one night comes knocking Gabe. Gabe is Clay's former bandmate and was the leader of their band 20 years ago, and he has come and he has asked him to help him save his daughter. Now, Gabe's daughter has decided to herself join a band and go and help out this castle in another empire. She gets stuck in a siege, and the siege is being run by monsters, and he needs help to go and save his poor daughter. So what does he do? He tries to get the band back together, and that involves getting Clay on board. So he first gets Clay on board, and then Clay and Gabe go off, and they each go and try and collect each of their former bandmates in order to go and save Gabe's daughter. Now, I love this story. It was really fun. The characters were each unique, which is kind of surprising for being such a new author to the game, and he really did great work. And in the back of this book, you'll find that there's interviews that they had with the author, and he discusses some of his inspiration, such as the fact that each of these bands in this book has the components of the old style rock bands. I also really enjoyed in this book that it's not the typical age demographics we typically see for heroes of a storyline. Normally you have, your 16 to early 20s year old hero who goes out and, is new to the game, top of his physical, is on the top of his physical game as well. But instead we are dealing with people who are fathers and are older, and they passed their prime, and now they're just older men, chilling and retired from this life, but they get back into it. So it's really fun to hear a similar trope of killing monsters and all that such, but from the perspective of older people who are not necessarily the 20-year-old young top peak condition that they once were 20 years ago. So that was absolutely fantastic about this book. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book was that I really felt like this was some kind of D&D adventure. For those of you who don't know, D&D is Dungeons and Dragons. This really felt like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure to me. They go off, they have all these choices, they encounter various different types of obstacles, and these obstacles were always different and unique, and at one point an obstacle may seem completely ridiculous and not necessary, but then boom, it ends them on this whole super comedic journey that's completely not related at all to what is actually trying to get done here, which is saving the daughter of Gabe, but instead it's just this fun little side journey that's actually quite comedic. This author also is able to blend comedic and non-comedic elements so well. On the same page, you can go from absolutely laughing to crying. Like, it is so well done how he combines those two elements, and he constantly keeps you engaged. And overall, for a debut novel, and even for not a debut novel, this is an insanely good book. And my only issue with it, honestly, I had very few issues with it, actually. I didn't love all of his combat scenes that the author wrote, but writing combat is difficult. Like, you can see it. Like, there's a reason why it's an extreme talent to be able to excel in writing combat, and why some authors are way better than others, because it is a unique skill, and you can see he's still getting his way with it. Overall, this is a fantastic book, and I have very few issues with it, and almost all those issues can be absolved with the fact that this is his first time with this is his first published novel. I'm super excited for the second book in the series, called A Bloody Rose, and I will be picking it up ASAP. I have to give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The comedy was amazing, the serious tones were fantastic, the story turns were always entertaining, and none of it felt annoying. And overall, I loved every part of this book. And at one point during the interview in the back of this book, the author talks about why he wrote this book, and he basically says that he just wanted to write a book that he wanted to read. Well, I'm sure I'm not getting his wording exactly right. That really sums up how I felt about reading this book. This is just one of those books that you read and you're just like, this is a fun book. This is fun. I enjoy it. It's great. It's a good time. So if you really want a good time and you're really into fantasy, and even if you're not into fantasy, this may be a good starter book for most people. It's got a lot of great elements in here, the comedic factor to keep you hooked, and honestly, I think it's full of amazing character development and really, really sublime storytelling. So look for this, pick it up, 4.5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. And I hope to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions down below. Okay, bye everyone.